really important that if you're on this path, that you are really engaged with your partner as far as getting on this path, making sure that you're coming together and having excuse me, conversations about this, because attachment parenting is a big deal. I think that it's a totally different way of thinking and a totally different way of really approaching parenthood. And so many people don't and just sort of fall into it. So I thought I would read the 8 principles of attachment parenting as we're sort of going into this conversation. And I'm just going to pause at each one and have us chat about it a little bit. So the reason why I do suggest you going and checking them out. If you're doing this attachment parenting thing and you're new to it, or you've been doing it for a long time, you've never been to this website, it's called attachmentparenting.org. I definitely suggest that you go there. The website's been around for a long, long time. I've been a parent for just over 21 years, and we've been attached most of the time. My oldest one, not until he was about 2 or 1.5, but that's really when I got turned on to it. But the principles are very. I haven't yet. Sorry. My principles are very. They're very different from mainstream parenting. I think a lot of them are anyway. They're kind of common sense, and people would think that they're no-brainers. But I think that they're only no-brainers if you really think this way to begin with. If you're really thinking about that place of love and respect for your children, and. So anyways, let's start at the beginning. The very first one is prepare for pregnancy, birth, and parenting. And, I think that one's super important. I think that in our society, a lot of people think about what car they're going to buy or what dog they're going to buy more than they think about the child that they're birthing. And I think that this one is super important. And I think that that's really when you have to have the conversations, right? I mean, I know you kind of, Eric and I got married when I had 3 older children, and then Sam and Soraya, Eric and I had together. And so he had that kind of baptism by fire that I was already this weird lady that did all these weird things. But you also said that you really appreciated the parenting, because I think often attachment parenting or positive parenting can become synonymous with permissive parenting. And we'll talk about that when we talk about discipline. But you had some friends that really...
Before we met, I observed friends with kids that I thought, I don't want to do that. And so...
Like friends that were really permissive in their parenting.
Yeah, or somehow the kid was the one that was wearing the pants in the
family.
And so I observed a lot of things, and I took a lot of mental notes of like what I didn't want to deal with and what I wasn't willing to deal with. And then... we were dating, and then there was one night where we brought kids with us, and one of them took off in the store and we couldn't find them, and so then we weren't going to do the fun thing that we planned, and this kid freaked out about it, but you held to your guns and said, this is the consequence, and this is what the cost of doing what you knew you shouldn't do was. And I appreciated that, because I've seen parents kind of cave, and then their kid becomes like a tyrant on their chair, like, are you going to do what I say?
It's just really funny, because while that really endeared me to him, it scared the crap out of me. I went home thinking, thanks, you two. This is not happening now. Thinking that we were definitely not getting together because they were so naughty that day. It was Eleanor and Jacob. And so, Grandma, if you're watching, I think I've told this story before. And we were going to go run an errand, and in a big box store, and then we were going to go have dinner at a fun place. And I don't even remember, the fun place was like Burger King.
No, it was like Leo's.
Oh, that's right. It was like a pizza place that had like, it was like a Chuck E. Cheese kind of pizza place. That's right. I remember now.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking they had run off. And those two were kind of thick as thieves, because they're 22 months apart, and especially if my oldest one wasn't around, and he wasn't around that day, then those two got us so much trouble. Oh my goodness, so much trouble. And like their energy is because they both have this like weird, frantic, And so he had to run off, and she ran off after him, or it was the other way around, and so I had to like discipline in front of Erik for the first time. And you and I have been dating for probably 2 months or 3 months, and it was the time. It was time to take the next step, but he hadn't met the children yet, and so he meets the children, and then they do that. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So it was, yeah. Anyway. That was a great one. But, you know, I think that preparing for parenting piece is super important, whether you're becoming a blended family and mom's already doing that, or you're starting from the beginning, because these principles, I was sort of living them. I wasn't going to change with Sam and Soraya. There were things that changed, but that part didn't change. And so anyways, definitely you want to make sure you're prepared for pregnancy, birth, and parenting. And yeah, I think we spend a lot of time preparing for pregnancy and birth. We don't spend a ton of time preparing for parenting. And that's the one that you really, you know, pregnancy lasts 9 months. Parenting lasts 18 years and then more. It does not end there. No. You do not get to spend, and I love the adage that you're not raising children, you're raising adults. And so you really need to be thinking about your parenting. That's, I think, the number one important thing. So the second one is feed with respect and love. And I think that one's pretty much speaks for itself. I think that feeding with respect and love, it absolutely can mean breastfeeding. You know, I was a breastfeeding advocate for many years, still am. I was a lactation consultant for many years. And that is such an amazing bond with your child and such an amazing way to sort of start them off in health. But I know that's not possible for everybody. So I like that it doesn't just say breastfeed, it says feed with respect and love. And so you want to make sure that means you don't prop the bottle and walk away from the baby. That means you're connecting when there's feeding going on. So respond with sensitivity. And this one I think this is like a major trigger for me when I see parents not responding in sensitivity. I feel so sad for those children. We were at Disneyland on Friday and it was, you know, I know that can be a stressful place for some people. We have annual passes, so we go a lot. So we kind of have it down. We know what we're doing and we know how to do it and have it not be stressful. And I think that I know for some people it's not like that, obviously. But goodness, this poor child that he was screamed at by his mother, and he wasn't just yelled at. She's like yelling the F word at him. And I'm thinking to myself, he's like 5. He's going to remember being screamed at Disneyland. And so we sort of sworn at. Yeah. And we sort of have this there's no crying at Disneyland rule. That doesn't mean it doesn't ever happen. Holy cow, one of Soraya's biggest ripper and tantrums was at Disneyland. But I think that
she threw applesauce at you.
Oh, that was a second tantrum. I was thinking about another one. True statement. True statement. Okay, so she did that too. Yeah. Anyways, fun thing. But no, I was feeling really sad for this child as I walked past, because not only did she scream at him, then she's grabbing his arm. And so I think about this like responding with sensitivity, and maybe it's because I'm getting older and I'm seeing it more, or I'm just in a spot where I'm not because our kids are getting older, so I'm not as focused on what they're doing. I can see other parents doing it more, and it just hurts my heart. And use nurturing touch. This is like really, especially with babies, like really understanding their needs, and not not doing the cry it out thing, and not doing and I'm not saying you shouldn't ever let them do that. There's some parameters that I have for helping children get to sleep. So sleep is like this bridge. And your job isn't to take them over the bridge. Your job is to get them to the bridge. And so, I think that we have this notion, and it often comes with attachment parenting, that we have to get them all the way there. And really, it's not about that. It's about helping them to have healthy sleep habits. And that doesn't mean that you let them cry it out either. So there has to be that medium, that in between. Allison says, do you have any recommended reading for Waldorf moms and preschoolers? Definitely. You Are Your Child's First Teacher is an amazing book by Rahima Baldwin-Dancy. I would absolutely start there. Heaven on Earth by Serafina Oppenheimer is another good book. Those are good places to start. Our Before the Journey, which is free on our site, is also another good place to start. Our kindergarten has a lot of great stuff in the next one is ensure safe sleep physically and emotionally. So we kind of went through that a little bit with getting your child to sleep, but I know that we're tired. we have a kid that's been up a lot. So excuse the bags under my eyes and his yawning.
It's like 2 a.m. Oh no, there's this little figure in the room. Oh shoot, it's Raya.
She's struggling right now, but we'll get through it. On the topic of ensure safe sleep emotionally and physically. So with regards to that, to most parents, to most attachment parents, that means the family bed. And we used the family bed for many years. I think the thing that, with regards to partnering, is knowing when it's time to shift from that space and into their own space. And we've done something with the last two that, and when Erik and I got married, Ellie was 4. She was ready. She was kind of ready to go, and she wanted that big girl experience. And that didn't mean she couldn't come in and snuggle up with us, and we always had kids on the floor and stuff like that. But regards to her own bed, she was ready. Different kids are ready at different times. Samuel, when he was 2.5, he wanted to sleep with his big sister. And so that made this transition really nice. You know, I mean, he was, and that was really early. I did not expect that. But he was asking, and she was asking because she was like the big sister, you know, she like wanted him to snuggle up with her. And so, that really worked well. So if you are trying to transition a child out of your bed and you have an older child, I think that it can be super helpful. We did the same thing again with Soraya when she was ready to move through, to the, out of our bed. And again, it's about being ready. And sometimes that means they start out in their own bed and they end up in your bed. But it's about sort of being, again, on the same page with Dad and sort of knowing and understanding. Do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Provide consistent and loving care. So that doesn't mean that Mom and Dad have to be at home or that Mom has to be the stay-at-home parent. It just means that you have a loving care provider. And to me, from where I stand with all of the parents that I work with, that means that you also have to cultivate a group of people that you trust to help care for your child. Don't you think? I mean, I think we've really worked on that. That's we worked with having sitters that really understood what we wanted and what we expected. And I think that can be a really hard one. And I know most attached parents shy away from that. And I want to reiterate that it's a necessity for you to find people that you trust. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to be attached parents as well. It just means they have to provide a loving environment for your child while they have them. So I get a lot of like, oh, well, we can't trust that one to Grandma and Grandpa. And I go, why? Why don't you just train Grandma and Grandpa? Train Grandma and Grandpa on what your values are. If you don't want them to be watching TV the whole time, then, I would say things like, Mom or Dad, I know that they'd really love to help you in the garden, or they'd really love to help you outside, or they'd really, instead of getting into a power battle about the television, really work on having some loving support that's around you. A lot of people don't feel like they can use their parents. Maybe they had rifts there. And we get it. We've been in spots where we've not gotten along with. It's rare with my parents, but we've had a couple of spots with your parents where that's not been the ideal relationship. And we lived in the same town.
Well, and there's times where they may be dealing with something that...
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily always...
But it wasn't appropriate for us to use them as a sitter. For sure, when we lived in the same town, it was not an appropriate situation.
And it may just be that they've got some stuff going on.
Right, absolutely.
It's probably best to not insert other kids.
Absolutely. So in that respect, then you want to look for a caregiver that will help you. I think it is really important that you look for that. So many attached parents shy away from that because they think they can be the only caregiver. And that was one reason why I wanted to really go through the API guidelines, because it just means that you need a loving caregiver. So find a teenager that you like, that you respect, and train them up. I think that's golden when you have a relationship with a teenager that's maybe a homeschool teenager or not, to somebody that you really trust and support, somebody at church maybe. So cultivate that relationship. I think there's this idea that you have to find somebody that's already like that. And I think that you can train that person, right? I mean, we've been in situations where when the kids were younger, I remember we had the share girls, and they kind of knew what we wanted, but we had to sort of go, well, this is what we really want. We really want to have no TV. We want to have you interacting with them and engaging with them. And you may have to pay a little bit more for that, but I think it happens, and you can find it. And then they know your expectations, and they know, oh yeah, we're going to the Nielsen's house. This is what Mrs. Nielsen, requires of me. And so it's about training them up for that relationship, and it absolutely can happen. So I am very much a pray and meditate gal. I might go, all right, Lord, universe, great spaghetti bowl, whatever name you're putting on deity, please help me attract the person my family needs. And then your job is to open your eyes, open your ears, open your email, wherever it is that person comes, and that person will appear. And it might appear in a responsible teen. It might appear in a grandparent. It might appear in an older person at church. It might appear in a neighbor. You never know. But if you're not open to it, then you shut yourself off from that. Okay, practice positive discipline. Now, it does not mean permissive discipline. You got to know the difference. You got to know the difference between being permissive and being positive. And that doesn't mean that you're not ever punitive. I mean, definitely that can happen at times, because there are just some sort of situations. I'm going to say, especially with when you have kids that are on the spectrum. Kids that are on the spectrum are very black and white. And we've got 2 kids that have some spectrum issues going on. And you would say that we discipline them way differently than the others, because they respond differently. So, we have this culture right now that is like so loving and enveloping over kids on the spectrum. But we have to also remember that we have to discipline them differently. That they're not going, just because we want them to have all the love and everything that maybe our neurotypical kids are having, because that they tend to have life a little bit easier. We also have to remember that we have to approach them in discipline in a different way.
Well, just because they're on the spectrum doesn't mean they're not figuring out how to work it.
Right. Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, gosh, yes. Because they are so black and white, and they are so articulate often, I think they figure out how to work it quicker than other kids do sometimes. Because they go, oh, wait, that doesn't work, but this works. And then they're going to do this one thing over and over and over again. So that's one way that being permissive is going to bite you in the fanny. If you have a child on the spectrum, being permissive is going to really mess you up. So don't be a permissive parent. That means you have to hold the space, and we have a lot of information on holding the space on our website. You have to hold the space. You have to understand rhythm. You have to really be there and be that positive parent if you want that to work. And when you have a child that's on the spectrum, there's definitely going to be some cajoling that goes on. Some like, oh no, that can't happen until this happens, or oh, this happens, and so here's the consequence. There's definitely going to be that going on. You have to do that, because otherwise you're going to feel like a mad woman or a madman. It's going to feel crazy. So practice positive discipline. I like this one. This is the very last one. Strive for balance in your personal and family life. So that's the one where I find that when I watch parents that are being attachment parents, I often see that one out of balance. I often see this.
That's where the husband's relegated to somewhere else, because
yes, absolutely. Dad is not part of the encircling situation, and he's off somewhere else, and mom is sleeping in the bed only with the child, and there's no dates happening, and there's no sex happening, there's no togetherness happening, and we've seen that in a lot of partnerings. And
I'm not a therapist. I imagine there's some of that's they're looking to their children to meet some emotional needs.
Absolutely. I think so. I think that can happen. I think especially if you come from maybe a family background where you had everything except attachment parenting, like really horrible parenting, or a parent, maybe you came from an abusive situation, or, a lot of parents that come to attachment parenting end up coming to it because that is not how they were raised. It was like the opposite of how they were raised. And so they really want this for their family. So my suggestion for that is great, but do it right. And that means you got to have balance. And that means you have to like be as in love with your partner as you are with your child. More so, because when your child grows up, this person's still going to be here, and hopefully, right? That's the bond that you have to really nurture. So you should never, never, never nurture the one for the child at the expense of this one. You have to work together to find that. So that's why I think when you're an attached parenting, you're going to subscribe to that method of parenting. You have to be on the same page about it. You have to both like be in a loving, understanding place. Is there anything that you would say to dads with regards to when you have a child that has needs that mom has to, because I see this happen a lot. Dads will be like, well, I have needs too. And so there's a matter of like being the grown up and realizing,
well, yeah,
that, do you have any counsel for dads, wise counsel for dads?
Well, I mean, it's a pressing need that's always needs to be dealt with first. But the knowing that if I help with X, Y, Z, then things can be freed up for other things. Where if I'm not helping and it's like, well, this is this thing that you're into doing and I'm not going to be, you can go do what you're going to do and I'm going to go do what I'm going to do, then, so if that happens, then the mom's just going to be overwhelmed. And
well, then she's not going to have any time for dad.
No.
Absolutely.
So, there definitely needs to be like a balance and the caring of the child.
Right. And I think it's important that that if mom is putting together, I would say, like, let's just take the nighttime routine, for instance. So our nighttime rhythm is way different than the rhythm was when I was a child. Not because my mom was a horrible person. Hi, Mom, I love you. I know you watch my videos. But because she didn't know any better. And that was kind of the culture of the 70s. And you didn't take your child and really help them get to sleep. And was I scarred for life? No. No, I mean, I know how to sleep, and that's what came from that. But
sure. I mean, that's the way it was.
When you were kids too,
Yes.
Like I remember when we got married, my kids were like, "Can you please tuck us in?" And Erik was like, "Huh?"
It's like, just go to bed. Tucked
in, and they were like, "No." But we have this nighttime rhythm, and ours goes a bit like we light a candle, I read a chapter from a chapter book, or if they were younger, I would read to them from something else, or like for Ellie, we sang songs. Like we sang the Martin Mist song, the Lantern Walk song, like every season. She was so hooked on that. Sung my Fastest Swindley song. Oh my goodness. We sang it all the time. Like I can remember when I was pregnant with Sam, like began pregnant with Sam, and I remember saying to Erik, I got to train you on the song because there's going to be some nights that I'm going to be down with this baby and you got to know the song. Yeah. So there again, that's where I brought him in. I didn't make that just my thing. I brought him in from the beginning because I wanted him to be part of that nighttime routine. And so that way, when I wasn't there, he could do it and pull it off with no problems. And I will say, dads hold the space differently. So if there's a routine that dad and kids come up with, then that's good too. That if dads and kids have a good nighttime routine, then mom, you should let them have their nighttime routine when they do it, and then you should have your nighttime routine with them. Otherwise, try to have something that's together. So we do this candle lighting. We read, we have a prayer together, hugs and kisses, and then we leave the room. Now, granted, we have 2 kids that are sharing a room right now, and that's a little bit harder when they're not, but I don't think it has to be. I think that you can definitely, again, take them to that bridge, and they need to walk over that bridge of sleep by themselves. So maybe they're listening to, an audio, or some sleep sounds is what we call them, like ocean sounds, nature sounds. But there's something that helps them to sort of transition into that space. And then there were times that I for sure would stay, depending on the child, stay with them until they went to sleep. Didn't mean I was in the bed with them necessarily, but I stayed with them until they went to sleep. There were definitely times that I was in the bed with a child until they went to sleep. I remember Soraya really struggled at times. Even though she was ready to be in her own space, she's still not ready for me to not be in that space with her. And so there were times that I stayed with her. So I think that it's about finding a rhythm that works for mom and dad, and that mom and dad are communicating about it. I think that that's one that I get a lot of get a lot of questions about dad is not on board with the nighttime rhythm. He just wants them to just go to bed. And I think that that's the way we were raised. And so I think that it's really easy to be like, well, just go to bed. And I think that when you're an attached parent, you really have to help them get to that space. You want to help calm them down. So that's just one area that I think you really need to talk about. I was trying to think if there's anything else. I think that with regards to attachment parenting and partnering, if you want to have a happy partnership, you need to make sure you date. And we've talked about that before too, in another video. You need to make sure you date. You spend enough time with the person that you love so that this bond is strong. And Erik and I have been married for, it'll be 13 years this year. And I can count all of our knockdown, drag-out fights on one hand and still have fingers left over. And because we don't fight. And that doesn't mean I'm not a fighting person, because I am so choleric and I am so bossy. But I've also learned. I've learned how to calm myself. And he's learned how to speak up when he needs to. And we work together on things. And that's what partnering is all about. So if you're going to play this attachment parenting game, role, whatever you want to call that lifelong, life-changing, I think for children, really raises resilient children, situation, you need to make sure that this is a really strong situation. Because I was an attached parent even before I was married to Erik. So in my first marriage, I was attached to my kids, but my ex didn't want to have like that attachment, and so it created a huge rift, and a lot of that was from his own childhood, I think, and his own dealings with love and affection, and so I didn't see that soon enough to help him with that. And it created a lot of resentment. And so I wanted to make sure that when Erik and I got married, we were on the same page. That he knew that this is how it was going to be. That that these kids were always going to come first, not between he and I, but first as far as like we have to deal with their needs. And then when we have their needs dealt with, then we can be together. And if we deal with their needs together, so much better, because we're dealing with them together, we've taken care of them, and then we have time together. And I think that's what's forgotten often, is when you are on the same page together and dealing with those children's needs, then it's easier to come together. It is so, so, so important. So I can't think of anything else. I know I did most of the talking today, but sorry. I'm glad you're here anyway. Do you have anything else to say to dads or moms?
No, I can't. I
think of
think we
anything.
covered it okay.
I hope you have a wonderful day.